Today I'm going to be giving you guys a story time on how I had to pay my ex's ticket. Now this is a good story.
Oh, you fancy, huh? Let me see your hands. Wave them at them bitches hating on you with their friends. Girl, you got it.
Now you're probably wondering, Nikki, how on earth did that happen? And I'm going to get to the story. So firstly, this was several years ago, and I was actually in college, and this boyfriend and I were dating for several years at the time. And we were actually in a toxic relationship at the time, but we were in a better place at that time, so I thought that we were actually going to be more serious, and that's what it sounded like too on his end. We were really trying to make it work. And what had happened was he lived also with his family that was 2 hours away. We both went to the same school, and he actually got into a car accident one night and totaled his vehicle. Thank goodness he was okay though. But what happened was, at that point, I was wondering if maybe we could offer him one of our vehicles because our family had an extra vehicle, and I asked my mom if there's any way I could let him borrow one of our vehicles, and she said yes. So I told him he could borrow our vehicle, and he borrowed mine, and then the other cars, we just switched over, and I had to use my mom's, and then she had to use the spare. So at that point, he was using my vehicle, which is no problem, and he was very excited and thankful. And I was just trying to be a good girlfriend, you know? So, definitely trying, because I definitely loved this man at the time, or thought I did. But anyway, at that time, he said yes, and he used the vehicle for several weeks before they actually bought him a new vehicle. Thank you to his parents for doing that. And they were very thankful that I was doing that as well, and so was he. Very appreciative. And what happened was during the 2 weeks, he was driving back and forth some weekends to his family from school and also to work too, which no big deal, right? Like I knew this was going to happen. Like this is part of his normal routine. No big deal. But what happened was when I actually got the vehicle back, a few weeks after, I was planning on cleaning it for some reason. Like I don't know why, I had a feeling just to clean it. It didn't look dirty, but I was just wanting to clean it for some reason. And what happened at that point was I got in the car and just was like cleaning around. No big deal. The car was pretty clean. Thank goodness. But I had the weird feeling to look in the glove box for no reason at all. And I opened it. And guess what I found in my glove box? A ticket. And it was not my ticket. I didn't have a ticket. It was from my ex. Well, my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Because one, he didn't tell me anything. And I had to look it up actually online to see if there was still, or I don't know if I had to call or look online. It could have been either of those, not sure. But I remember I had to look into it to see if it was paid at that point. And sure enough, it wasn't paid. And my my boyfriend at the time didn't tell me. And he also didn't pay it. So what I had to do was talk to my mom about it because we were helping him at the time, right? So she had told me we could lend one of his cars, and I didn't know anything about doing this, and I just didn't know what to do in this situation. And she's like, I asked her what her advice is, and she told me that I would just pay it off because you don't want to have anything on your name from the situation on your vehicle. And I was like, sure enough. So I had to pay it. And I never confronted him about it. But I kind of regret taking that advice now because I actually wish I was just like asked him about it. Because my problem is not, because I wouldn't have had an issue the fact that he even got a ticket. That's no big deal. Like we all get tickets, right? Or stuff. No big deal. But my issue was the fact that one, he didn't tell me. And even if he didn't have money, he should have still told me, you know? And had that conversation. It's about communication. The communication was lacking in this relationship, obviously. So it was not meant to work out, but whatever. But my issue was the fact that he was just not direct and having that conversation with me because we were getting into like an adult relationship at that point. So I was hoping we could handle it better, but unfortunately the communication was just lacking there. And it kind of sucked, but I was like, of course, that's like a good explanation of how the relationship would turn out in the future too. And I wouldn't have even had a problem like if he was just upfront from the beginning about it or like told me about it later on saying, hey, I forgot to pay it or whatever, no big deal. But there was no communication. And I also regret on my end not confronting him taking that advice, because I think that was also a downfall on my part. But that was one of my more serious relationships at the time too. So I feel like it's kind of a learning lesson, unfortunately. So I think a lot of people can relate to that too. Maybe you guys can relate to that. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting story. And looking back on it, I can't believe that I put up with that back in the day because I should have just addressed it and said, hey, you know, like, what happened here? But now I don't even know, like, why that happens, and it just feels like my kindness was taken for granted in that situation. And maybe it was just a miscommunication, or maybe he forgot something or had a rough day. Maybe I'm going too far with it, but it kind of made me really upset because I was hoping that he would be more direct about it. Or even if he wasn't direct, I would just much rather have him pay it up front. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even care if he didn't tell me, as long as if he just took care of it himself. No big deal then, because that wouldn't matter, right? But the problem is that it was unpaid and not told. You know, like, I didn't know anything about it. I've had to find it myself. So thankfully I found it. But yeah, do you guys have any interesting stories about your exes? And also, do you guys want to hear any other stories about my exes? Because I've got tons of them. But I have more than one ex, so there's tons of stories I have about dating. I think we've all dated a few frogs before meeting, like, someone more right for us. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to learn and make mistakes and realize what's something that's actually of value to you. And sometimes you also change, like, the people that you truly love and should be with. So yeah, that was an experience. So I did have to pay it, and I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like a few $100s, which back in the day when I was in college, that was a lot of money. So it's just very sad to me that happened. And I think too, we were just kind of both in a situation where this was our more serious relationship at the time. And I think it was kind of more difficult to actually communicate in the situation. And I wish I would have also, like, been more direct about it too. But yeah, so I don't know what happened about that. If you guys want any more interesting stories about my love life or advice, let me know down below. And I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.